Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Where's Wally podcast. It is a cold February. We got to get in a lot of snow right now. It's today's date is February 11th, 2025. So here's what we're going to do today. Today is going to be a recap of something I did before. Have modified it. I shortened it up just a little bit, just for time. Now, the reason I want to show you all this again is because I found a bunch of stuff, and I found a way to extract that stuff. More specifically, I got a bunch of data dumps, right? And within those data dumps, one of those dumps is the Hunter Biden laptop. So it's a pretty risque subject, but there's a lot of things to be told in there. So I'm not going to take a political stance on this, just like I did with the DNC. My stance is basically going to be strictly intelligence. So, what I'm going to use this as is a method, or this is a resource for me to show the world that there's a capability out there that they probably haven't seen. After I go through the slides, I'm going to go into a free program called AUTOPSY, and I'm going to show just a little bit of what is to come and then what I'm going to do with it. Well, essentially, what I'm going to do with it is what you'll see in the slides. So, with that, I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. There we go. Window. Let's see how this looks on the screen. Let me change that to. I can make it bigger and make me smaller, but I can't see my screen because there's a thing in the way. Or, yeah, let's do this. And then edit layout. That's a little better. I like that. And this format's not a permanent format, so everything's going to be fine. Let's see, update layout, custom layout. Number 2. It's my first time, everybody, as you can probably tell. So, all right, so let's go into this. All right, this is as many of you will know, in 2016, the DNC was hacked. Not just the DNC, but also Podesta, Clinton's email server, which actually the full version was just released within the past 2 weeks. It's not very, maybe in, let's say, normal political circles, it's not very well known about that, but it did pop up on the radar. So I'll probably take a second look at that. In addition, a lot of the, let's say, radical groups on both sides have been breached. I grabbed all that, and I'm also working on a little project with our friend Rich. So he's taking a look at some stuff in Farsi, and we're gonna do something like that because that's a target worth fighting. So what this is in general, right? I took the DNC data and Podesta and a few other sources that were political. If this would have happened to the Republican side, I would have done the same thing. Like I said, this isn't political. This is a capabilities and also an educational process. So if I'm a Russian intelligence operative and I get this data, what am I going to do with it? So that's kind of the whole point. And every major, minor, first, second, and third world country has an intelligence service, various degrees of sophistication. But and I'm not going to take a lot of time on this, and this is going to be a shorter video than normal. But let's go to see if I can switch slides from there. Nope, got to go over here. Okay. All right. So from the book, right off the bat, a lot of this, in at least my experience, is from human. So how do I take human stands for human intelligence. Taking what I learned in human intelligence, combined with intelligence analysis, combined with what we call IWA, irregular warfare analysis, combine that into something new that's usable, that's not necessarily easy to prepare, but easy to consume. So when these things are being built, they're not being built for a common user. These are for operations. These are for professionals, right? This type of data is meant to be consumed on the large scale and that focus scale so that people can consume it and make a decision. So this is from the book, and I encourage everybody to go on Google, check these facts. You can go on any major intelligence agency and look up human, and it's going to be there. It's one of the oldest. It's one of the oldest professions of warfare, basically. Talking to people who in a village where the enemy just went through. I mean, it's been around since people could talk. And also PAA. So PAA stands for Placement, Access, and Accessibility. This is also public. You can search. Obviously, I put a bunch of sources here. Placement, access, and accessibility is how collectors on the human side, and also just the intelligence side in general, how when you're looking at a person, here's what I need. Does that person have PAA to what I need? And the issue is, and in my other talks, and I forgot to mention, my other talks are in the Wally Talks folder. It's a playlist on my channel. Those talks are, when you're looking at placement, access, and accessibility people, I used to use the Iranian nuclear program. So I would ask the crowd, who do you think in Iran would have the most information about the Iranian nuclear program? And that only one time on, let's say, 400 talks, a person got it. And that was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, right? So of course that he would have all the information you could ever want about the nuclear program. He was one of the presidents of Iran and leaders in Iran who revolutionized it. But what are the chances that you capture him and he's going to cooperate? So you have to take in things other than placement, access, and accessibility to the information, but also, are they going to actually talk to you? Is the information they're going to give you reliable? Are they going to commit espionage against their country? A whole bunch of factors, let's say sociological and emotional factors that have to be taken into consideration. Okay. So I skipped a bunch of slides that you could see on your own if you want to go, but here's what I'm going to do with the additional data dumps, right? I am going to basically put it together the same way I did this. One thing we got from the DNC was basically a list of all the employees, all the contact information, departments, who manages those departments, and I put that together as just one source. Okay, so this is a starting point. And it's an interesting starting point in itself where you have, and by the way, all of this is redacted. So if anybody thinks that I'm releasing somebody's PII, if you notice let me see if I can zoom in actually. Let's go 86753. So in the Excel or the CSV I used to make this, I changed everything. See, so like, here we have personal email 23, and then 24 is in there somewhere. DNC email at dnc.org. Oops, let's go back. All of the names are changed in some way or another. So I'm not releasing anybody's stuff, quite frankly. Let's go to okay, so in these are all departments on top, right? And then here we have the different actual departments and then who works within them. So this goes from the actual department itself to the individual's personal email, their work email, so their DNC email, office phone or connector phone, and then their personal cell. And then sometimes there's pagers on there. You just roll with the punches when you build the algorithm for something like this. I'll be showing how to make the algorithm in Analyst Notebook and Gephi. It's more complicated in Analyst Notebook, which is what this program actually, the visualizations that you see here are actually from Analyst Notebook. Gephi is a good tool because it's free. The newest version's fairly easy to learn, although there can be some hiccups if you're a first timer. But this is not, I would say that it took me a long time to figure out how to do this effectively. But now, 2025, there are tools that you can use, uh, open source and completely free, to basically mimic these results very simply. And it's simple. So think of this: party affairs is A, the people are B. So in your text file, you have A, comma, B. A is connected to B. And then we have B. B is connected to C. And then you'll have multiple C's. You know, it already knows that row within your table data is A, B, C, D. They're called edges and rows in Gephi. But financial information. So with the DNC, I was kind of shocked to see this. And this is 2016. All of these cards are now expired anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. And obviously, if you notice, I'll zoom in again so nobody goes crazy. You know, redacted. Although all the original stuff was not redacted, actually. So, and I think I know why this information was in there. Like all of it, the card, the expiration date, the CVC2 number, the individual who owned the card, all their information. So the same thing from like the department, you know, their personal cell, the emails, all that. But then their further information. So the information you need to get a credit card, mother's maiden name, you know, your social, things like that. All those details were in there too. But then it also had the email and the password. And what I think they were attempting to do is streamline uh, their payments by having a few individuals who ran finance, right? And so they looked at all the cards, or they had access to all the cards, and so you know maybe they had those cards going to a centralized email, and then they picked them up. But it doesn't seem that it was centralized because all the emails were different. But somebody at the DNC had access to that, and they were able to go in and basically pull the financial data. This is the location. Now, this is a small, very, very, very small speck of a greater piece of data. What I was trying to show here is if you have data like this, like where you have personnel data for a lot of different people, and you and you notice that it's localized. So let's say you have very large Excel spreadsheets of donors in this case, right? So you take the supporters or donor information and you break it down in rows, right? So you have their name, where they live, and then all their other pedigree information that they provided to the DNC and the DNC captured. This applies to any data. So but as you've probably heard the term PSYOPs and IO campaigns, information operation campaigns. If you wanted to conduct a information operation or a PSYOPs, right, you need to know your audience essentially, right, to some degree. I mean, there's other ways, but that's one of many. So with that, I started to notice that I would see, let's say, 250 people, and they all have the same address but different apartment number. So why does that matter at all? If you're a foreign operator, right, and you're trying to, let's say, make Democrats and Republicans more radical, what would you do? You would try to sway the center more to the outskirts, which is exactly one of the things that Russia tried to do. In this case, my thought was, all right, so what I would do is I would have these basically skyscrapers in New York where people live. And I know how 75% of this building votes. I would start putting very tailored flyers in their mailboxes, things like that. Graphical things like flyers, flags. You start representing something that you want them to move more to. As people see things on a more common basis, they start to it starts to numb them down, but they don't feel like that thing is bad. Let's go on to the next. Okay. So this one's actually really important. This is the only slide I've ever shown, and that was intentional. Obviously, when you're a professional in the Northern Virginia area, you know, if you've declared a side, let's say, that can be pretty bad. So in this case, um, took all the emails, big network, big trouble, right? So all of this is, and now people will also say, well, that's illegal because there was classified information in there. So no, I didn't even touch the classified information, and I'll show you how that works at the end here with Autopsy. We didn't use Autopsy back in 2016. We actually used a more professional program, but we essentially stripped the email of just what I wanted. And so you have any folder or a zip, you would extract from the zip. In there you have EML, EMLX. There's like 15 different email file types. But in that, I took sender, receiver, because typically you only have one sender, but you may have many recipients. So you have basically a huge text file at first that we convert into CSV. But sender, receiver, all of them. Date, the data was sent, right? And then replies as well. So replies would look the same, except for the sender becomes the recipient, and etc. Subject line was in all. There's a subject line attached to all of this, and that's not really as important when you're looking at the communication network. And then a couple little other details, but nothing major, nothing that you can see on the screen. So here's what I'm going to do with this. The same way I took the data, or we not modified, but represented the data back in 2016 and 2018 is the same way that there's the same thing that I'm going to do with the emails from the Biden laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop. And then I'm going to compare the two. Now, if you're thinking objectively, obviously the Clintons and the Bidens talk, right? I just kind of want to see what those interactions look like. The emails that I've been through so far, at least on the Hunter laptop, some of them are really, 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 really interesting. It's a lot more complex than I think people think. It's not like every email's corrupt. That's not the case. Yeah, it is something though. I wouldn't recommend diving too deep. So this one was interesting too. Something I found. You can star people in your contact list. So that's something I'm looking into now. But don't necessarily know how to forensically separate that from normal group. Like, figuring that out now. But Hillary, they had friends of Hillary and enemy of Hillary list and multiple of them. So that's not a good thing for the enemy to know, right? Because then you can really, really wreak some havoc in a lot of different ways. Let's see. I kept this one in here because I thought it was kind of important, and it's going to be, and you'll understand why when we get into the data dump. And this is going to be weeks away when we're talking about the American Patriots 3%ers, the Utah 3%ers. What are they called? Basically, a lot of the people who were just pardoned by Trump. The groups that they were associated with, like Oath Keepers was the one I was trying to think of. They all got hacked, and I have all that. And so they're not nearly as bad as people think. A lot of the videos that they put out, at least internally, are things like, hey, here's what you need in your house in case there's a tornado, or here's what you need in case there's a hurricane. A lot of it's general preparedness and general, here's what you need to do. Make sure you have this. Here's how to do it on a budget, things like that. Then there's also this faction of those groups, and I've probably only been through 1%, but that are very, very extreme, right? So kind of the same as Antifa. It's like, Antifa, but I think that the let's say the 3%er types are more. They have the potential to be pretty violent, I think, at the end of the day. But for whatever reason, the DNC it was basically a category. Like if if you're part of the LGBT community, they wanted to know, and then they saved list. So then the DNC did all this stuff. It was for, in their minds, I believe, probably good record keeping practices, perhaps. But here's the problem: they weren't expecting to get breached, and they got breached, right? So now, if you're a neo-Nazi, if you're something like, let's say, Westboro Baptist, and you get a hold of this list, those are your targets, right? Groups like that have showed us in the past that that's what they will do, and you know, now can do, I could say. Now, do they have the intellectual capacity to put shit like this together? Probably not. Um, but I could be wrong. But they put all these people into this list. It creates a vulnerability for marginalized groups for sure. Okay, so let me explain merging real quick, and I didn't add the other merge. I was going to do that in a different video, but I'll explain that real quick. Merging with this program in Analyst Notebook is so let's say I have 27 CSVs, and they're formatted the same or different. Let's say they're formatted in 3 different ways. So I write 3 different algorithms, and then I automatically import that data into Analyst Notebook. I then take those 27, 28 separate charts, and I combine them into one. That's merging. In Analyst Notebook, if anything that's exact, like let's say a phone numbers are pretty exact. Social security numbers, pretty exact. Emails, pretty exact. Those things, if that email or that actual object in the chart is duplicated, those will merge into one, from 2 to 1, or 60 into 1, and etc. So on and so forth. And that's why we get these connections, and that's why we develop these networks, so we can see, okay, sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's very little, and so you can say, okay, well, Dave is in 2 different groups, or he's associated with these 2 clusters. This is an example of a larger merge. So even with the DNC, I probably only built charts on 5% of the overall data. If I had a team of 4 and some development people and some people who are really good with databasing, I could probably do the whole thing in 4 months, 4 months to 6 months, right? Same with any data dump. What ends up happening is you sell it. Basically, you take what you need, you take these important little bits, you build your product, and then you go to the person that you're trying to appeal to, and then that data still has value, right? You can take all that metadata and you can put it into various systems, and it can be raw reporting or raw intelligence, especially with foreign governments. Okay, this is just a random view of the previous. So I called it the Where's Wally feel. That's somewhere in here, I think. I can't remember, but these things get really big really quick, and then they get really complex. So they look cool. It's modern art masterpiece, right? But really, if you don't know how to interpret that, it's just a pretty picture. Let's move on. And these are just other representations of the smaller representations of the bigger merge, just so you can get an understanding of size and how crazy this is. So, all right, this is a little bit involved with the LGBT, but subculture backlash, right? Like if I wanted to do, if I wanted to tailor a phishing campaign and I had this data, you could, right? The original plan, which got shot down by my legal department at the company I was at the time, I was going to send a email to all 1.8 million people, and it was actually more than that, but that's what we had exploited at the time. You send an email to all of them, right, with some type of ticker, like click on this link to make sure that your information is on the dark web, and all that link is a ticker. So it counts how many people click the link. And you'd be surprised, of 1.8 million, you're getting 30% for sure. So if it was a real threat from a sophisticated actor, like, you're getting popped. And this is an example when you have these. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, this is a educational representation of how a foreign government would use the DNC data to conduct intelligence operations, right? But those intelligence operations in PAA and human, you have to have people you're going to target, which is a whole, essentially, it's an int within itself. And so what I did was I kind of picked randomly, and the first guy I picked clicked on an email, and I started reading through it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I started looking into the gentleman. And this is all I had to begin with. So I had that he was part of the he's part of the DNC political, name redacted. He attended a party with another individual, a fundraiser, I think. That's his email. That's his fake business and his fake phone, right? And so then you have to expand that out. You can't just go on nothing. You have to know about the person, what are their likes, what are their interests. Have they published anything? Where have they worked in the past? You see, you really, and this is the part that really takes a lot of time, because before you're ever going to go put one of your people in harm's way, you really need to understand everything you can about that person. There's a whole bunch of different, basically, personality tests you can do from the outskirts. You would conduct those. But for this one, let's say, here's what the 9 data points that I used, or the 9 types of data I used. So personal data from multiple sources. So let's say, for starters, Google operators on the individual, and then operators basically siphon the data, because, let's say guy's name's Dave or Steve. That network is a lot bigger than you'd actually think, right? Or there's way more Steves than you would think. Sorry. So you have to be very specific. Boolean logic works a lot, but I use personal information from multiple sources, all unclassified, all in the open. Social network data. So once I had a name and I had a picture, then I went looking at social media, right? And then I looked at employment data. Who has he worked for? What's his level of education? Where does he sit politically? That's pretty important for something like this, from the intelligence perspective. Does the Library of Congress have anything on him? Then I found out he owns some companies. Who are his clients? Pretty easy to find. Has he hosted or will be hosting any political events or fundraisers in the near future? Yes. Has he given any public talks? Does he have a YouTube page? Has he been on the news? If so, yeah, grab all that, and you watch every minute of it. And then I also had the emails that we already had within the data dumps. So find where he has been emailed and sent emails and replies. All right, I'm going to do my best to zoom in, but this is Autopsy. And okay, to the left, this is just one folder, right? So this is a folder that I found, and this is full of, let's just do 185, EMLX. These are email files. Right? So when you're just looking in the zip folder, you don't necessarily see anything, right? But forensically, you can open up that email file and see the email, right? And so that's going to be fun for another day, but there's a lot of it, right? This is the address book, which I'm not going to open right now because it's pretty packed full of personal information. So, like I said, Autopsy's free. It's really cool. You can generate reports. I can send those reports back. Let's do files. Excel report. Yep. Boom. Check all. Next. All results. Finish. And that's going to run for a while. But that's something I'm doing now. So now process keyword hit email addresses. Yep. And so it is going to search all those folders and see if it can find any further emails. But it's going to be interesting to see. Uh, I kind of, I kind of try to put some thought into whether it's a good idea. It really doesn't matter whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, essentially. Um, uh, because obviously there's some, let's say, adult rated material in that, and I'm not going to show that, obviously. Um, I'm not even going to show the emails. What I'm going to show is the communication network. And then how does that fit into other things we know about communication networks, let's say in the DC Beltway. So may end up being pretty unpopular, but that's okay. You know, um, some things are worth doing. I think this is probably one of them. What what I think would be interesting and also the scariest possible outcome is I have, let's say, I probably have 3 to 4 million emails from Iran, Russia, China, probably a minimum. It's probably way more than that. I just haven't even found them yet because these data dumps are so large in size. One person going through it is a pretty daunting task, to be honest with you. So, but I would be terrified, but also not surprised if there are connections between, and maybe not current, because remember, uh, data dumps go back, right? So if somebody breaches an email system, they're not just taking 2025. They're taking everything. So you have emails that can go back 10, 12, 13, 14 years. Just because there's a connection there does not immediately mean that it's an act of espionage or it's a concerted effort to collect or hurt the United States. It just means there's a connection. What if the person is a diplomat emailing another diplomat? Yeah, sure. Visually, you take the visual representation for what it is, and that serves a lot of purposes. But if there are connections that are bad, well, then I'm going to have to put a whole package together and send that to somebody who can do something about it. But yeah, that could be pretty scary. So, like I said, this wasn't meant to be a super long video at all. I'm going to do. I'm trying to get a little better at editing. That will come with time. That'll come with resources. But I'm going to try and put something out like this 2 to 3 days a week. It's either going to be data dumps, open source intelligence, or analysis, putting all this stuff together. And then, without rushing, probably by the end of the year, I'll have a big slice of a bunch of different data dumps analyzed. And once we have that, we'll do it live and we'll put some of this stuff together. So at that, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate if you guys comment. If you guys think this is something you want to see, let me know. If you think it's not something you want to see, let me know. I know this is kind of niche and there's a specific audience who would like this. So if you don't like it, no worries. Let me know. I love feedback. Like, subscribe, comment. And at that, I will see y'all next time. And thanks for tuning in. Oopsie.